We are going to make ocean sculptures using plasticine clay and recycled items. This project helps viewers see a dialogue between humanity and nature by bringing on an awareness of how people and the products we consume and waste become part of our environment and ecosystems. These ocean sculptures will be based on coral reefs, which is an underwater ecosystem characterized by reef-building corals. Reefs are formed in colonies of coral polyps held together by calcium carbonate. Most coral reefs are built from stony corals whose polyps cluster in groups. Coral reefs provide an important ecosystem for life underwater. They protect coastal areas by reducing the power of waves hitting the coast, and coral reefs teem with diverse life. Thousands of species can be found living in one reef. One of those species is called a sea urchin. We're going to make one of those today. You can see it here in the example, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves. First, let's make sure we get our list and materials ready. The materials needed for this project will be recycled metal soup can, a hot glue gun and glue, any kind of tape, cardboard for cutting out certain shapes to connect with the actual recycled metal can, scissors, plasticine clay, and tools for sculpting. You will first need to cut out an organic curved shape that will be taped and glued to your metal can. This can range in shape and size and can be placed on the bottom or side of your can depending on the look you prefer. You can use tape and/or glue to secure it. If you have your piece or cardboard close to the opening of your can, also place tape on the inside of the can. Once your cardboard piece is secured, take some colors of plasticine clay and cover the tape and cardboard parts. You do not have to cover the bottom where the sculpture piece will sit, but making sure to cover all areas with clay that you are interested in building coral pieces off of will help you have a surface to attach all pieces of clay to. This is a very important part to the sculpture itself. When making any sculpture, you need to think of levels of interest within your piece. This coincides perfectly with creating sculptures with coral because coral actually grows in different stages. You will see low levels of early colony growth, mid-level growth, and high-level mature colony growth. We're going to be creating, with this project, 3 different levels showcasing each part of that coral growth. To begin, we will start in the mid-growth level range and start with making the shell of a sea urchin. Sea urchins are animals that are typically small, spiny, and round. They live in all the Earth's oceans at depths ranging from the tide line to 15,000 feet. Because they cannot swim, they live on the sea floor, and their main defense against more agile predators like eels and otters is their hard, spiny test, or what we would call shell. Their secret weapon, the carrier crab that's inside them, uses the sea urchin itself like a suit of armor for extra protection from predators. The bodies of mature sea urchins contain 5 symmetrical sections, unlike mammals, which have 2. They come in many different sizes and colors, and even though their sections are similar, there are still unique differences in texturing of their shell depending on the species. Okay, now it's time to dive in to learning how to make a sea urchin using simple tools and clay. We're going to be making the shells of a sea urchin, and the spines come out of the places that have like little dots and stuff. They come in many different colors, and we're not going to worry about what kind of colors because I would like you to be as creative as possible, choosing colors that perfectly fit with your color palette that you're doing for your sculpted pieces. There's a couple tools that you can use. I have some of the classic ones, a bamboo skewer with a pointy edge, which is like the best tool because you can do anything with it, and a paintbrush, the smallest of your paintbrushes because I love the rounded edge here. And there's other tools that you can use too that have a little bit more flexibility, like clay tools that have softer, sort of pliable tops. These are great for irregular denting and texturing on your pieces. I don't use these as often. I use them more for when I do different type of coral, and also this piece of paper, which is like a cardstock thicker paper. So if you're at home and you want to do this with paper, this is one of the best for cutting clay, and specifically with our plasticine, it's a very stickier, kind of malleable texture. And if you have a proper cutting tool, it makes the cut nice and clean. And so I'm going to show you how I use that today. And then this is going to be kind of funny, but if you have just something like this, a glue stick, it's perfect because it actually helps us roll out our stuff. Better to use something that we have, right? So everyone can say that they have a glue stick most likely in their possession. And then the type of clay that we're going to use is plasticine. And today for this project, I'm going to do a little bit of color mixing with purple, blue, and white to give us a fun color for our first sea urchin. I like to make the color, so I'm going to take a piece of the purple. I want to mix it with this blue color, and I'm going to add white. Now it feels weird, right? Because I'm taking all this clay at once, and this is kind of difficult because in the beginning your clay is a little bit harder and it's not as warm from working it. But as you work it and blend it, it's going to create a new color. Did you know you can eat sea urchins? They're a delicacy in Japan. Interesting. Okay, you can see how this is blending really nicely. It's kind of similar to the color that I did, and this light that's on here is a bit blue. I have to reserve a little bit of this, a piece of my actual clay, so I'm going to take a piece of it, and this is going to be put aside because I want to use it. Maybe I'll take just a little bit more. So this is going to be reserved for a different part of the actual sea urchin, and I'm just going to roll this into a nice little ball until I get a nice kind of roundness. A little bit of marbling in there. I kind of like it. You know, depending on the shape, sometimes they're more rounded on top, and then sometimes they have a more flatter bottom. So to do that, I just kind of tap it on the bottom of the thing to create a kind of flatter surface. I've got my shape, and now I would like to work on putting in some of this texturing detail. Now I'm choosing to do the same color of clay, but if you want to have fun with this, you could add a different color in this part to do these ridges, and these ridges are going to be made with that extra set of clay that I put aside. I'm going to flatten a little bit with my hands to get it ready, and then with my trusty glue stick actually roll it like as if I'm rolling dough. I don't want to roll it too thin. I want to talk a little bit about this mat. This mat is actually perfect because with plasticine, you'll notice that with your hands, plasticine has a little bit of that oilyness, so water actually doesn't clean it very well. I don't really like that, and it gets everywhere. It gets all over the table. So we're going to use this mat, and this mat is actually going to protect the table, and the cool part is you can just pick the bits off and it kind of preserves your working surface. So everyone's going to need to make sure they get a mat like this. You can get it at the dollar store, but if you're at school, I have them provided for you. I am going to now use this trusty tool to cut. So the first thing I'm going to do is as I pull out this nice, it's not really rectangular, but it's sort of an ovally rectangle, and I'm going to cut it in half because I'm going to use both sides, and I'm going to just say that that's going to be one set and this is going to be the other. And what I want you to do is I want you to bow your cardstock paper, and on one side, so I don't know which way I want to start this, on one side I want to cut one piece like this. This is an extra piece. I don't want this piece, so I'm putting it aside because it's not the actual look that I want. And I'm going to bow it on the other side because what I'm ideally trying to do is get a shape that looks like this. And then I'm just going to cut each one of those in half too. Okay, so for the first part, I want to designate where the center of the top of my sea urchin is. So I'm going to just take the bottom of my smallest paintbrush, and I'm going to use that rounded edge to mark the spot. Now I'm going to remark that later. This is just a guide for me right now, and I'll come back to that, but that's for me to see. And now what I'm going to do is for each of these pieces, I'm going to place a little bit lower. No one's going to really see the bottom. You just want to be able to tell that it's sitting on that spot. And now here's the thing. I need you to be as careful as possible. When you do your next one, you don't want to do right across because we're not going to do 4. We're going to do it like almost like a 3. We're thinking about it in 3s. And again, don't worry about that bottom. You're just going to smooth it out. Okay, for the next part, we're wanting to do the little circles. There's little things that go from larger from the middle, and they get smaller and smaller as they go to the top. And I try to do my best to follow and do one on each part of these edges so that it's roughly in the same spot and they're roughly the same size. So you want to be mindful of that. So let's just see. And look at my sea urchin is kind of not exactly centered, so I might even just do that first before I move on. So, all right. So I'm going to actually take that extra clay that I was cutting, and these extra pieces now are going to become my little pieces for the circles because I don't want to waste it. And at some point you might want to keep any of your extra clay when you've made a color, because that can pop up again in a different place, like for seagrass or another form of sculptural coral. And then you have compositionally balanced colors within your piece. So not only are you thinking about textures, but you're thinking about color too. So if I have any extra of this, I might use it again somewhere else so that I can share the colors that they kind of spread out in my color scheme that I'm working on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and make some circles. These ones are quite large, so I might say, okay, I might want to do them half that size, and this is really, my goal is to try to make them roughly about that size. So I actually might make a couple. I know I have to make 6 of roughly the same size, so I might actually try to do that with each of mine and make 6 little pieces. And I would do this for each set. So just so that you see, I'm going to take that first one and I'm going to place it on the spot I want to do it. I'm going to push a little bit so that you see it, and then I'm going to go to the next one. And then they get smaller and smaller from that point on. Okay, so now we have all the little circles going from small to the medium, to small again, going further to the bottom. And then once you have them all placed, you're going to take just an extra little ball and you're going to place it in the center now, just to give a little bit of definition, pushing it down as if they've all connected to that center. And with the bottom of your brush, you're going to indent that center like so. Down each of these spines very carefully, and this one's a little bit narrow, but that's okay. We're going to add the detailing of the indent from your paintbrush, and I'm just going to go all the way down. You can take your bamboo skewer and really carefully with that tip, really carefully go through and just do your points. And I just put a little bit more of my dotting even on the top, and now it's just about figuring out where I want to place it on my sculpture. So I've just pulled out my sculpture here, and I'm thinking about the levels and the heights of all my different things. And so I'm choosing to decide that my piece, my urchin, is going to actually sit right here within the bottom of my piece. And if you accidentally squish too hard, you can always redefine with your sculpting tools on your piece. And I think that's a nice place for it. It seems balanced. It's kind of in the center. I'm going to be adding more elements within this part of my piece and also the bottom part. Well, there you have it, our first sea urchin done in our mid-level coral. You can change up and vary the style in which you add texture to your sea urchin. Beside mine here is another one done in a darker blue-violet. Please make sure to check out my other ocean coral tutorials to see how to make some of these other elements you see in the mid-level corals here. Thank you for watching.